Los Angeles, a sustainable city. We're going to talk a little bit in this presentation about a section of Los Angeles, California that's being developed called Playa Vista. And we're going to think a little bit about the sustainability aspects of this development. When you think of Los Angeles, just take a couple moments and what do you think about when it comes to sustainability? What words come to mind? Perhaps some of these words are the ones that you thought of. Overcrowding, smog, dirty, traffic congestion or long commutes, crime, inequity, unsustainable development. Or maybe there were some others that you thought of. Looking at the population of the city of Los Angeles. Currently there are about 4 million people living in the city. And in the future, by 2030, that's expected to increase by 32%, or another 1.25 million people. And if we look a little more broadly at Los Angeles County, there's about 9 million people living there right now. And by 2060, there's expected to be 12 million. And it's pretty densely populated. So where are these people going to go? Where are they going to live? Before we jump into looking at Playa Vista, let's just talk a moment about new urbanism, because new urbanism principles were a focus of the developers of Playa Vista. So the 10 key principles are walkability, a city where people can easily get from one place to another by walking and where walking is appealing and attractive. Connectivity, mixed use and diversity in all different kinds of diversity and types of buildings. Mixed housing, types of housing, apartments, condominiums, single family units, different levels, price points, different levels of income supported by the housing. Quality architecture and urban design. Traditional neighborhood structure, a focus on the neighborhood aspect of the community. Increased density, so not the suburban type living that we might think about with everyone with their house and everyone with their yard, but a higher density. Green transportation, sustainability in many different aspects of that, and quality of life. Wrapping that kind of into two key concepts in new urbanism, the sense of community and a use of ecological principles. So now Playa Vista. Playa Vista is the largest infill project in the United States, meaning that it's being built within the city limits, within the existing city, not out on the periphery or the edges of the city, on vacant land. The land that's included in Playa Vista is 1,087 acres. It's 1.5 miles from the Pacific Ocean, right in Los Angeles. It's separated from the sea only by wetlands. It sits between LAX, the airport, and Marina del Rey and Venice, right along the coast. And why are there 1,000 acres available in this ideal location? It's the former Hughes Aircraft Corporation and their large runway. In the 1970s, it was open land, a few buildings from the Hughes Aircraft Corporation, and a very large hangar, and a very large runway. Where exactly are we talking about? So if this is the map of Los Angeles, and if you look just along the coastline here, at the bottom you'll see Westchester LAX. So that's where the airport is. It's up on a higher plateau. And right above that, just to the north on the coast, is Playa del Rey, and sitting behind that, Playa Vista. And then right next to Playa del Rey, you will see Marina del Rey, where the big marina is, which we'll talk a little bit more in a minute. And then just north of there on the coast is Venice. So in the scheme of things, with the very large area that's LA and LA County, it's a relatively small section of property, but again, the overall property is just over 1,000 acres. So going back in history a little bit, this is a view, an artist's rendition of the area and the wetlands. There was a Tongva settlement and the Bologna wetlands. And this goes back a very long time. There's actually thought to be civilization there during pre-modern times, several thousand years ago. There's at least known to have been settlements there 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, but it probably goes back considerably further. Just to put that in perspective a little bit, the Spanish arrived in the area in 1541 and created the first Spanish mission there in 1771. In 2004, during excavation of the area, over 300 human skeletons were found in a burial area and many artifacts. So it's thought that this area was a settlement and a burial ground area for, probably 5,000 or 6,000 years now. And I'll talk a little bit more about the excavation in a few moments. So this is a view of the Hughes aircraft in its prime. This is looking out towards the ocean in the background. You see the big runway. You see the Hughes buildings to the left on this slide. The property extends back to behind the camera view. Get some perspective from this of how close it is to the water. And here's an aerial view, a little more modern time. You see the Pacific on the right. You see Marina del Rey in the foreground, which was excavated in the 1960s. When this was excavated, the soil that was dug up to create the marina was all dumped on the wetlands, just more to the top of this picture, really destroying a lot of the wetlands here, which became very controversial and came into play in trying to develop a plan for Playa Vista. And then up more to the top of this slide, you'll see where the runway and some of the buildings were. And this is yet another view. So all of the houses off to the left on this slide, abutting the runway area and the Hughes buildings, is up on a plateau higher than the Hughes buildings and the runway. And then in the distance here, you see the Pacific Ocean again and Marina del Rey, more towards the top of the slide. So all of this area between Marina del Rey and this plateau to the left, which is Westchester, is Playa Vista. So what about Playa Vista? In the 1970s, Howard Hughes died, and so the land became available for reuse. The family was involved, and the heirs were connected to Summa Corporation. And in 1978, Summa Corporation proposed the first plan for this area. They had an extremely ambitious plan to make it an urban setting for over 3,000 residential units, close to 3 million square feet of office and light industrial space, including high-rise towers, over 2 million square feet of mixed commercial use, including multiple massive shopping centers, over 600,000 square feet of mixed-use development, and including 600 hotel rooms. Summa Corporation, it said, essentially ignored all community voices, concerns about the wetlands, about this scale of development on that space, and attempted to plow ahead with their plan for this very extensive urban type development on these 1,000 acres. This plan was approved in 1984 by the city, and immediately 2 major lawsuits were filed. The Bayona Wetlands filed a violation of the Coastal Act, saying that not enough acreage was set aside to preserve the wetlands, and the Venice Town Council also filed suit based upon concerns with the environmental impact report. So this was being fought about in court until 1989, when Summa Corporation let go of the project and it was taken over by McGuire Thomas Partners. McGuire Thomas Partners was very influenced by the new urbanists. There were new urbanists involved in the planning and in the organization. And they reached out immediately to the environmentalists who had been opposing the project so vehemently, and to community members, and began to hold community outreach meetings and to really listen to the concerns of the community members and to try to figure out how some sort of project could move forward in this space that would meet a variety of constituencies' needs, a variety of stakeholders' needs would be met and interests would be met. They worked to address the concerns and reconceiving the project, and they used a settlement conference process rather than going through a straight court legal process to fight this out through lawsuits. So this really began to shift things in terms of the development. Here's some of the agreements that were made as part of that settlement conference in 1993. The wetlands, about 450 acres, would be restored. 26-acre riparian corridor would lead to a freshwater marsh. 90 acres of bluff that separates Westchester on that higher plateau from Playa Vista would be restored. And there would be 8 acres of sand dune restoration out near the coast. Along about that time, some very good news came through that DreamWorks would be taking over the hangar. They were going to be buying the hangar and turning it into a new DreamWorks studio, film studio. This was a dream come true in many ways. There was a great deal of press coverage, and it was heralded as one of the biggest deals that Los Angeles had ever made. People were very excited about it, although it did not become a reality. Basically, what happened as time went on in the 1990s, McGuire Thomas, despite all their wonderful intentions, was unable to secure adequate funding to begin the development. And that means they also didn't have adequate funding to begin the things that they had agreed to with the environmentalists in terms of restoring the wetlands and the dunes. So DreamWorks pulled out, and the project was taken over by a group called Playa Capital. Playa Capital also had to figure out the cash problem, of course. And about the time that Playa Capital took over, Proposition 50 came about in California, and preservation funds were available through Proposition 50. Playa Vista also continued working with the environmental groups and the community groups, and kept in the same spirit of Thomas McGuire. But with this Proposition 50 money available, one of the ways that they could raise some cash for the project would be to actually sell the acreage of wetlands to the Trust for Public Lands, which is a state organization, for preservation purposes. And then the state would buy that land with Proposition 50 money. So in essence, they transferred almost 200 acres to the state, and that gave them funding to begin to work on some of the project and then to attract other funding sources. In addition to the 192 acres that they sold to the Trust for Public Lands, they donated another 291 acres to the Bayona Creek and other wetlands to preservation. So the state ended up with about 600 acres of the original 1,087 acres. So at that point, the development, the land that would be developed, was a little less than half of what originally was planned for development, which would have meant filling in wetlands and building another marina, and so on with that very first extensive plan. This put the restoration of the saltwater wetlands into the hands of the California Fish and Wildlife. So no longer was the Playa Vista Development Group going to pay to restore those wetlands, but rather funding was generated from those wetlands to begin the Playa Vista development. And the state became the owner of and responsible for developing and preserving those wetlands, specifically the salt water wetlands, which is very extensive. The president of Playa Vista LLC was someone named Steve Sabaroff, and he worked pretty extensively with the environmentalists, and one of the environmentalists is written in Olive Branch. Steve Sabaroff is an environmentalist's worst nightmare, a developer willing to compromise. So the good and bad of that is that he was willing to compromise with the environmentalists and give up just over half of the acreage. But of course, that does then allow the other 500 or so acres to be developed. And of course, there were some environmentalists that wanted it all to be left undeveloped. But compromise, indeed, they've done. And a lot of the development is occurring now and has recently occurred. Now, the thing is that the new urbanists who were involved with the Joseph McGuire Group were not necessarily thrilled with what the Playa Vista Corporation went forward with. There were compromises also made in terms of the development. Compromises made with the city, with zoning regulations, and other things. The new urbanists from that previous time have said that they felt they were not consulted and that some aspects of their plans had been abandoned. Some of this, again, is due to city codes, and some of it due to style of developers. Some developers were brought in from Orange County, further south in California, and they have a different style, different approach. So not all aspects of it, in terms of the development, are in line with what some of the new urbanists had hoped. But phase 1 has been pretty much completed, and phase 2 of the project is well underway, and there are aspects of the phase 2 development that are more promising design-wise as far as the new urbanists are concerned. In 2002, the first residents moved into Playa Vista. From the 1970s to 2002, almost 3 decades since they started the project, people began moving in. And the phase 1 of the project has won many awards for sustainability practices. In 1999, it received the Awahani Award in recognition for high-density mixed-use design. And in 2001, it won an award from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the Playa Vista Clean Air Award, for creating a community where residents were able to manage their household needs without getting into their cars. So again, it's more that walkability and bikeability. They've done a substantial number of sustainability efforts, have been part of phase 1 and are also part of phase 2. They're providing electric bus service for traveling to different points around Playa Vista, and also a shuttle service that travels to the nearby beaches. They partnered with Global Electric Motors to provide incentives for residents to purchase or lease zero-emission electric cars. And they focused on recycling in the construction of the phase 1. 90%, they had an average recycling rate of construction recycling, which is very high. In 2005, they won the State of California's Waste Reduction Management Program Award. They were recognized for the use of recycled materials in construction. Many of the buildings are constructed from materials with a high percentage of recycled content or from certified sustainably grown lumber. The residential units are 28% more efficient than California's energy efficiency standards require. And these California restrictions are fairly high, and they're 28% more efficient than that. They adopted residential sustainable performance guidelines in 1999, which require all builders to adhere to environmentally responsible principles. And the development uses solar power to heat the community swimming pools. They've installed gray water systems for the landscape irrigation. As far as green space goes, approximately 70% of the development area, more than 750 acres, are devoted to parks and open space. So, as I previously said, about 600 of those acres were sold and or given to the state for preservation. So that means another 150 acres or so of the development land is devoted to parks and open space, there's an extensive amount of open space. There's high density with a considerable amount of open space. So more than 600 acres are deeded to public environmental groups. And then there's freshwater wetlands and a riparian corridor that are part of the development that are attracting a lot of wildlife already just in the past decade. This is a picture of the riparian corridor. It goes along the Westchester Bluffs. You can see the palm trees up at the top of the picture and some buildings that are Loyola Marymount College is up there at the very top at this location. And you can see the extensive greening that's been done there and the riparian corridor that feeds into the freshwater wetlands area. Again, a lot of wildlife is being attracted to this section of the development, as well as to the other parkland areas in the project. So let's talk a few minutes about the housing that's been developed there. By 2018, it's expected to have housing for 12,000 residents. Quite a few people are already living there, and the final phase of phase 2 is being constructed now. Here's some pictures of some of the housing that's there. Fountain View is one of the projects. This is senior residences and apartments and assisted living for senior citizens. It's scheduled to open in late 2016. It's 100% reserved before the project is even completed. The photo on the left is summer 2015 in construction, and the artist's rendering of it is on the right. And on the bottom picture here, we see a group of people on a wetlands tour that Fountain View held. Fountain View has a Facebook page where they do community building among people that are planning to move in before they even move in, and keep people up to date on what's going on with their project. Right across the street from that project is an affordable elderly housing complex that's being built. And again, this is currently under construction, and it's 100% reserved before completion, which is true with the vast majority of the housing that's being built. So affordable, low-income housing, regular traditional housing integrated throughout the project, as we see here with the elderly housing. There's also apartment complexes. This is an artist rendition of the villa, which just opened recently. And these are some LEED Silver certified single family homes that are just now completing construction. Again, 100% reserved in advance of completion. So people are very interested in moving into this section of Los Angeles. There are also CPUs, controlled price units. These are units that are for sale, condominiums or small houses. And they are for community serving employees such as teachers, firefighters, police, healthcare workers, and government workers. These are for first-time home buyers and for people who work within 5 miles of Playa Vista. So they don't necessarily have to work in Playa Vista, though many will, but very close by. Those were built in phase 1. There's 131 more such units being built in phase 2. There's also 3 affordable apartment complexes and 1 elderly affordable complex already built. Thinking about health and fitness and recreation. There's the Center Point Club and there's something called the Resort. These are two complexes within Playa Vista that have a wide variety of recreational features and activities. Free passes are provided for all homeowners in Playa Vista, and the rental complexes all have a substantial number of passes as well for the people that live in the rental complexes. So for all practical purposes, these complexes are open to everybody who lives in Playa Vista as part of being a resident there. There's also a large number of other facilities within the Playa Vista development area. There's courts for basketball, tennis, and other sports. There's fields for active recreation. There's fields for passive relaxing as well. There's putting grounds. There's multiple pools. There's multiple playgrounds. And there's organized activities for adults and children. They have a Facebook page that's open for the public, but they also have a Facebook page that's for residents. The open spaces, the parks, and all those things are completely open to the public. Anybody can drive in and park their car or take a bus in or bike in and use the regular playgrounds and things that are just open like they would be in any other community. It's not a gated community or in any way closed off from the public, except for the actual the resort and the other club that I just mentioned. Those are for the people in the community. But all the open spaces is available and open to everyone. Now, okay, so there's a large residential area, but what about a downtown? Do people have to drive 10 miles to a downtown to really access shopping and other amenities of a downtown? Well, no. It is something called the Runway, which is a shopping plaza, was developed as part of Phase 1. And really the whole landing strip area that you saw in earlier photos is scheduled to be the downtown of Playa Vista. So there's currently some shopping, theaters, and a restaurant complex through the runway. And then the airstrip area will be, as you see in this artist rendition in the lower right here, a whole downtown area that will be developed there. And in fact, as of February 2016, that downtown development area, the runway and the surrounding acreage of the former Hughes runway sold for $474 million to a Dallas investment firm and will be developed as the downtown of Playa Vista. So in addition to what was built in Phase 1, there's going to be extensive development of a downtown in that central runway area. So what about community? What about the community life? Here's a photo of a farmer's market. There's a regular farmer's market held there weekly. There's summer movie nights. This is on a park that's in the center of the area that has all the office complexes, which I'll talk about in a moment. This is called Central Park at Playa Vista. There are playgrounds here, tennis courts, walking paths, gray water pools and fountains to aerate the gray water that's used for the plantings and the large grassy area. And this is where they have this pavilion to have movies and concerts and so on. So it's very close, it's close by to the residential areas where people can easily bike or walk, but it's surrounded by the office complexes so that if there's nighttime activities and things here, it's not causing noise issues for the actual residents. Okay, so talking about that office area that's in the part of the Playa Vista community near and around that Central Park. People are referring to this as Silicon Beach up north in San Francisco, as Silicon Valley. I think we've all heard of that, a high-tech area. It's becoming very crowded, very dense, in need of more office space, in need of more living space for people. And so this area that's being developed is, because it's near the beach, it's being called Silicon Beach by people. So high tech has really been hurting here in the past 2 years. Just in the past couple of years, Google has moved there. They recently paid $120 million for 12 acres around the hangar, the original airplane hangar, where they're going to be developing their complex there. And they're leasing the hangar as well. I believe the hangar is a historical site. It's not apparently being sold, but they are planning to lease it. YouTube studios have moved in there, right next to the hangar. IMAX headquarters, national headquarters are there. Yahoo, Facebook, Microsoft, Belkin, University of California Institute for Creative Technologies, The Honest Company, Rubicon, many more companies moving in. Many of the office buildings are already built in phase 1, but there's another whole section of them being built as part of phase 2. So these are some photos that I took in January of 2016 at a visit. In the upper left-hand corner, this is at the YouTube studio building. Behind the building, there's lawns, and there's some pools that are part of the gray water system. The bluff is behind this area that goes up to where Westchester is. Moving clockwise over to the right, these are some of the pools and part of the complex where the YouTube studios are. Below that, you can see a view of YouTube from one of the streets between the hangar and the YouTube building. And then on the bottom left, Hercules South, this is again where the YouTube studios are. You can see in the foreground some of the plantings. And then up in the background, again, you can see Westchester at the top of the bluff. There's also an area with barbecues and tables, and so really, even in the office complex area, really encouraging community and people congregating and doing things together. And this photo's in the upper left-hand corner is a photo of one part of the hangar, where you can see that UCLA right now has some things going on in that space with architecture and urban design. On the upper right is an old Hughes helicopter that's displayed in a garden area at the YouTube studios. And then in the bottom is another view of the large hangar, the Hughes aircraft hangar, which is soon to be part of the Google complex. And these photos on the upper left hand, this is in that Central Park area that I mentioned. That's this is a playground. This playground in the background, and then right below it where the seesaw is really designed for adults. All the apparatus in there is adult size. There are playgrounds for children, but this is in the office area where all the high-tech companies are moving, so people can come out at lunch and play on the seesaw and rollerblade around on the cushioned bump area there, and again in front there with the pools and the fountain, that's part of the gray water system. On the upper right is another view of the movie and the bandstand area, and you can see the office buildings in the background. And the bottom right is another view of some of the gray water pools system. And then connecting it all are free electric shuttle buses. There's a picture of some of the buses here. Again, taking people from the office areas to the residential neighborhoods to the shopping district. And then there are also buses that go out to the beach, nearby beach areas. So Playa Vista, Los Angeles, 2016. It's been 36 contentious years. Especially the first 25 or so of those. There have been 3 development companies over that time. There's been probably somewhere about $10 billion of investment. There's 600 acres of preserved wetlands as a result of this project. There's about 500 acres of live, work, and play community for 12,000 people. And then all the space for the offices. And it's one of the most sustainable developments in the country.